What's up, guys? We have an awesome show for you this week. Doing something a little different. We're in a different location, got different mics. Please bear with us. This week, we are interviewing Dean Valentini and Anthony Mirabile of 18 Alpha Investments. They are on the bleeding edge of how to buy small businesses, how to look at businesses from the eyes of an investor. There are probably 10 people in the United States right now that are doing this at such a high level, and they are 2 of those 10 people. They're being very humble about it, and so we're honored to have them on the show. They were ex-experimental aircraft engineers that worked for the Air Force. They got out. I met them through the real estate scene, and then we realized that real estates get rich slow. So we're taking their steps versus our steps on how to build profitable businesses. They're very much, hey, let's buy something that cash flows. On the Cashflow Quadrant, they're going to buy a business, help prop that business up and spike the value, and they'll keep it. Very similar to buying a real estate property, and you know that needs some work, making it a little bit better, and keeping it forever. And so they're looking at it from a buy and hold framework. And a lot of us at Small Biz Rescue, if you're watching this, it's really interesting to get that perspective, because you, as your own owner, if you plan on keeping your business forever, then you should know some of the metrics that they look at. Or if you are getting older and you want to sell and get rid of your business, this should also be an eye-opening video for you on how investors are going to approach you to buy your business. I hope you guys enjoy the show. We'll see you, and we're going to get into it right now. Welcome back to the Small Biz Rescue Podcast. Today we are joined by 2 guests, one in person and one remote. We've got Rocky and Dean. What is up? We are interrupting the show to give you a word from our sponsor, which is us. We're sponsoring ourselves. And so there's 2 things. The first one is, did you know that we have free lean resources in the top left corner? If you go to hughcarnahan.com, free lean resources or free resources, it'll be in the top left corner. No matter what technology we use in the future, it'll always be that. Also, unrelated, we have a sister podcast. It's called FU Money. If you are interested in money, finance, becoming financially independent, we deep dive into that as well. Go check it out. We're going to go back to the show. So thanks for joining us, guys. Appreciate it.
What's up, Hugh? Glad to be here again.
Hugh, thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're glad to have you guys on. So they are experts at buying small businesses. And even if you are not interested in buying a business, why am I still sticking around? You're going to get to see by the end of today the why you might want to think about buying a business. If you already have a business, you can see from an investor's lens what they're looking at, how they're going to find businesses to buy, and then what are some small levers they can pull towards the end to instantly make the business a lot more profitable. If you're listening and you're maybe in the 50s or 60s or 70s even, and you're like, I want to sell my business, this could also be a great video for you to know some small levers so you can get a lot more money for your business rather than just say shut it down, right? A lot of us, or not a lot of us, but a lot of people I interact with don't have kids that want to take over Bob's Plumbing or Jim's Mowing. So they're going to talk to you about all that, but let's kind of start with some intros. Dean, kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Hugh. Just separated from the Air Force, actually. So both Rocky and I are and were flight test engineers. Was doing that for about 10 years, and then finally decided I wanted to be done with the 9-to-5 life, so get a little bit more freedom. Was able to achieve financial freedom and separate from active duty. So now I'm going all in on the business buying front with Rocky here with 18 Alpha, and yeah, that's the game plan.
Awesome. Rocky?
Cool. I'm a husband, father of 2 young boys. Got into real estate investing with Dean, and then from there, as we transitioned out of the military, we really latched onto this business buying concept. We love the cash flow from day one, love being owners. We also think it's a great way to kind of invest in our communities and build strong communities through business and ownership.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, so it's really cool. I kind of met them through the real estate background side of things. You guys are going to hear that as a recurring theme throughout the whole show and podcast, that we invest in real estate. But at 18 Alpha Investing, they are going and they're buying businesses. Well, businesses uniquely, by concept, by design, are supposed to make money, and a bunch of money. And a lot of us aren't living that dream. And these 2 guys here are going to show us how they find, then analyze businesses, and I'm excited to get into it. But before we get into how or any of the tactics, why would we even want to do that?
So I'll say one reason, and we get asked this question a lot, of like what shifted us to business buying as a strategy, as opposed to, hey, you guys are pretty successful in real estate. That's the community we were in. That's what we were surrounded by. And as we both approached separation and losing that, that six-figure W-2 9-to-5 income, salaried income, real estate's great, but one thing it doesn't do very well is give you a lot of income very quickly, unless you're doing something very active like flipping or something like that, wholesaling, whatever.
Right.
So we're like, all right, how do we crack that nut and replace our incomes, our very healthy incomes? We're not making millions in the military, but it's nothing to shake a stick at. We had a very good salaried income, and business buying was one way to do that, where you can replace a six-figure and mid-six-figure income on day one of acquiring a small business. So that's really what got us pointed in that direction from a strategy and kind of a necessity standpoint.
Got it. Yes. And you're going to hear us say it. I'm going to encourage people to buy real estate throughout all of this, but real estate is a get-rich-slow game. And if you're listening to this, you're like, oh, Hugh, why are you in Small Biz Rescue doing all this stuff? It's because real estate is a get-rich-slow game, right? One day I'll look back and say, oh, that was the best thing I ever did, but that day's not for another 20 years.
Yep.
So, Rocky, what about you?
Yeah, and Hugh, doubling down on that, we would love to own businesses, take profits from business ownership, and dump it into real estate. So that's kind of our long game. And if you study a lot of the people that have really built some strong generational wealth, that's really what they're doing. So you're leveraging both those strategies at the same time. As for why would you want to buy a business? There's some macro level trends that are ongoing, where the baby boomer generation, one of the largest generations in history, they're reaching retirement age. And so they're on the cusp in the early phases of that right now. 46% of them own all the small businesses in America. And so that's a lot of businesses that either need to sell or they're going to shut down. And so if you can position yourself to be one of the ones that transitions that business to the next generation, there's significant opportunity. There's also another macro trend to latch onto, and it's really internet, mobile, cloud, and then future of AI. A lot of these businesses were built on a foundation with very low technology. And so people like us in our generation and even younger, technology is second nature to them. If you talk to your grandmom and she can't figure out how to do something on her iPhone, love grandmom, right? But if you realize that trend and you can bolt this onto a new business, you can instantly add a lot of value to the bottom line very quickly. So there's a pretty massive amount of opportunity, and that's really the why.
All right, so I think you guys are saying is you're going to identify businesses that either hopefully are currently cash flowing or could cash flow a whole bunch, and then you're going to bring modern tools. And so you guys are going to get into some tactics later, but even without the AI and the fancy stuff that we will absolutely be talking about, we're talking about stuff like, hey, I just bought Jim's Plumbing. Have you ever considered using QuickBooks? Hey, have you ever considered having a Facebook website and running Facebook ads? Have you ever considered having a VA answer a phone? Nothing earth-shattering. But that kind of stuff will actually like quadruple a business in terms of value, right?
Yeah, you'll hear some of the other folks in the space say things like, look for the fax machines, right? So look for the antiquated technology that are indicators that these guys maybe don't have a website. Go see if they did, look them up on Google My Business, see if they even have a Google My Business profile or a website or neither. So it's very simple stuff that, like you said, and a lot of the businesses we've looked at as well, the marketing is limited to word of mouth, referrals, right? There is no outbound marketing, which that in and of itself is a pretty simple, pretty low cost, if you do it efficiently, way to really just reach so many more people and get so much more business. So it's a lot of just very simple, but not necessarily easy stuff. You have to know to do it, and you have to go spend the time and effort to do it.
Well, that kind of reminds me of a story. A few years ago, you guys have heard it. At least two of you guys have. We bought a hotel. Dave Pere and I bought a hotel with another guy, and I said, I'll be involved, but I have to run operations because, well, one, I'm stupid, and two, my background's in operations. So I was like, cool, this makes sense. Showed up, they didn't even have computers. It was a front desk from the 90s. They didn't have computers. And so I took out my wallet. I walked to the Walmart that was next door, bought a computer, brought it back, opened it up on the front desk. And like, that was the first time that whole building had ever had a computer. And I was like, guys, it's 2021. What the hell was going on here? Like,
I'm glad you said Walmart, because I do want to mention another trend that is a motivator, I know, for both Anthony and I, that is not a positive trend, and that is the ownership of businesses in America has shifted over the past, I think it's like, even as recent as a couple of decades. We've seen business ownership go from about 70% small businesses in this country and 30% kind of larger corporations like the Walmarts and the Amazons is completely flip-flopped. So now it is the opposite. Now it is 70% the Walmarts and the Amazons. And I don't know about you guys and the listeners, but like, it's convenient, right? I can go to Walmart and get all my stuff, but I don't want my communities, like my hometown, to be filled with Walmarts and,
right. It feels
the big box stores.
Disconnected. You don't know anybody. There's no investment going to the community. When you spend your dollar, it's all leaving to a different community away from you, as opposed to, where you're locally at. So, okay, so here we are. What do you guys want to take? Do you want to go into how do you find a business, or do you want to go into what, probably you want to find it before we analyze it? But how do you find it? What are you looking for?
Yeah, I think some of the early steps, anyone could take if they're interested in this is, one, just getting knowledgeable, just learning about this a little bit. And so Cody Sanchez is a great person to follow. Walker Deibel, author of the book Buy Then Build, actually back here. That was the first book I read that turned me onto this concept that instead of starting a business from 0 to 1, right, and doing a startup, any kind of new business you start is considered a startup. Over 90% of startups fail because it's really hard to get that first dollar across the line and keep it profitable. And so if you could buy an existing business that already has a set of clients, that already has a product, that already has some infrastructure in place, and then build on top of that, your success rate goes through the roof to be able to stay in business and stay profitable. And so I would encourage people to start following some of those people, reading a couple books like Buy Then Build or a Harvard Business Review book that exists out there on buying small businesses, and just get a little bit educated. At the same time, you can talk to owners. So next time you're in a business, local hardware store, something like that, just ask questions. Why is this like that? Are you the owner? Are you the manager? And just start poking around and start understanding where some value propositions, where they exist in these businesses, and you'll start to really find opportunities. And that's a really low barrier to entry, free way to start get going.
And what I love is all the resources you just gave, and this is why we're having this, right? Because the show is called Small Biz Rescue. You guys are effectively doing that. You're just going to look at it to buy. But what you just said, Jim's Plumbing has a proven track record because Jim's still around and it's been 40 years. So just buy the company and then do all the good stuff. And all the resources you're talking about have the foundations of what to do afterwards. And I want to plug the two of you guys. You guys have socials. Where should folks find out more about you? Because you guys talk about this stuff all the time, nonstop. As far as a lot of the concepts, I know you've learned some of them, but you've built on top of those as well.
Yeah, we're on Instagram, 18 Alpha Investing, and then we also have a newsletter, Cleared for Acquisition. It's a nod to our flight test background, like Cleared for Takeoff, but Cleared for Acquisition to buy some of these businesses and take them to the next generation.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so clearedforacquisition.com. Some of our previous newsletters are on there. You can also subscribe to our newsletter to get the latest editions every single week, every Saturday.
And they're really smart guys, so make sure you go follow them because they talk about some wild stuff and they're just giving it out there for free. Stuff that's low-hanging fruit that you guys could take and implement. Okay, so back to the business side. You find the businesses, now what?
Yeah, actually, I'll back up just a little bit for your audience. There's 3 ways to really find a business. And once you start looking at them, I think that's where you'll know if this is right for you or not. When you start looking at some financials and start looking at a CIM, a confidential information memorandum, which is a broker's packaging of, hey, this is what this business looks like. But the three ways you can find them is you can contact brokers. So there's business brokers, which is different than a real estate broker for your audience, but these are people that are in the mergers and acquisition space about how to buy and sell businesses. And so you could look those up and find them in your community. There's something called the IBBA, the International Business Administration, I don't know the acronym, but IBBA.org. And you could figure out all the brokers that are in your area that are registered. And you could just shoot them a message and say, hey, I'm looking into business buying. Here's roughly what I'm looking for. What listings do you have? And then you could sign an NDA and start looking. And so the benefit of the broker businesses is that seller's already decided I'm going to sell. And so you don't need to get them over that hump. They're willing to sell. And so that information will be packaged for you. The second way is you can do referrals. So any professional services that a business owner would use, they may know or be a lead source for any business to buy. Think your attorney, your CPA, your insurance agent, all those kind of professional services that a business owner would need, they'll know when an owner is ready to sell. And so if you start networking with them in a low threat way, like, hey, I may need these services when I'm a business owner, talk to them more from a client perspective, and then let them know what you're trying to buy, they may super connect you to some of their other clients that are looking to sell, which is awesome. And so now you have people looking for businesses for you, which is amazing. And then lastly is direct to the seller. And so this is an off-market strategy similar to real estate. It's like door knocking. You got to go get in person with them. You either send them a cold email, cold outreach in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, you got to get to the right volume level where that starts to convert, but you're trying to go direct to the owner. And one of the biggest challenges that we found, and I've had, a couple recent interactions with owners on this, you almost have to educate them the whole way because they don't really know. And so in order to do that strategy, I'd recommend you get to a certain level of education on this topic. Dean, you have anything else to add on kind of those three ways to source businesses?
Yeah, no, that was a great summary. The other advantage that a broker brings, or working with a broker who's already working with a seller or working with a business, is, like you said, that education. So not just getting them ready to sell, but also getting them mentally prepared that, hey, here's what my business is worth. Because, as business owners, we all think my business is the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's worth $10 bajillion. There's so much demand for it. And the brokers help kind of, if they're a good broker, they help bring them back down to earth and say, hey, based on these factors, these different, how involved is the owner still in the business? How profitable is the business? How good are their systems? Stuff like that that are objective or at least semi-objective measurements of how turnkey or how easy is it to hand off this business to somebody else. Those are the metrics that the brokers can help the owners understand. Hey, this is going to affect, I don't know how deep we're going to get into valuation today, but this is going to affect how your business is valued, what type of multiple that you use to determine a reasonable market sale price or purchase price of this business if it does go to the market. So that's the other big advantage of the brokers, is they kind of act as emotional support animals, if you will, where they just help prepare the sellers and get them, bring them back to reality. Not that all of them are, have inflated estimations, but a lot of them, like Anthony said, they just don't know, right? It's an education game. So.
Yeah. So, it's a little different, not this little different, but if someone's used to real estate, or if you're listening to this now and you're a business owner, you can imagine you're going to be probably a lot more emotional, right? Jim's plumbing, he built it. I keep using that as a generic, boring business example, but
his blood, sweat, and tears, sacrifices, life sacrifices. His kids probably grew up while he was growing this business. Like, he's put his last 40 years of his life into this thing. So yeah, naturally it's emotional.
And so it's a lot different. I mean, it's similar to some people selling their house that they grew up in, but even that's it's still just a structure versus I traded my whole livelihood for it. And so that's really cool. It's just an interesting thing to be able to do. It sounds like you need a lot of soft skills, or probably it'll be advantageous if you had good soft skills while talking to folks if you want to buy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's got to be a good fit when you're trying to buy, because you got to understand, you as the buyer also taking on a pretty considerable amount of risk, and I think we'll talk about financing later with small business administration loans that are available now, but you have to sign up for a personal guarantee if you're going to be more than 20% equity owner. And so you are putting, some of your assets on the line with that personal guarantee. And so you want to make sure as a buyer that it's a good deal for you as well, and it makes sense. Taking on a business, it's not as easy to sell. And so up front, when you go get into something, it's the right thing for you.
Cool. Okay, so you found a business, you think you've identified something. Now, what do you guys do? Let's say you're opening the door. What do you guys even look at to analyze? Should I even buy this? Is it too far gone? Or is this a cash cow waiting to happen?
Yeah, I'll kind of start us off. I did also want to address one thing you said earlier in terms of like, hey, sometimes maybe these are even cash flowing. So there's a couple different approaches in terms of types of businesses or types of strategies that buyers would look for. What we're most focused on is somewhere in the not quite turnkey, if we're talking real estate analogy, like not quite a turnkey home, there's still opportunity for growth and opportunity to bring value to the business from our unique skill set. But it's also not a flip in real estate terms. It's not a turnaround business. So we're not taking something that's losing money or has been on the decline, significant decline for the past 3 years. That's a valid strategy. We recommend that for more experienced folks who have maybe done this a couple of times and know what they're getting into, because there is a lot more risk there. We're looking for businesses that have been stable for a long time. They've been in business for a long time. A slight upward trend is really nice, but also still looking for those opportunities in terms of the fax machines, the ability to add, marketing channels, to add different revenue diversity, stuff like that. So
maybe you're looking for something that's stable. It's not losing money. It's not a bad business. Yeah. And then you're going to turn around and you're going to add stuff to it with your skill set.
Yeah, and understand all of these things are going to go back to the valuation and what you're going to pay for this business. So the more screwed up it is, probably the better deal you're going to get for it, but the more hard work you're going to have to put in to get it to a good place, and the more risk you're taking on by, getting into something, kind of catching a falling knife, if you will.
Right.
So, but yeah, as far as our particular flow goes when we're analyzing deals or reviewing deals, we kind of have two main stages right now that we call phase 0 and phase 1. Phase 0 is a very high level kind of pretty strict filter in terms of just getting rid of all the crap that is good, we don't want to waste time on. So it's a very quick decision point to say, does this fit our high level criteria? And then if the answer is yes, we can start digging into more of the, in the weeds stuff, some of the stuff that maybe requires a signed NDA, so we can look at additional details in the SIM or talk to the seller and ask them specific questions about their business if it's not included in the documentation that the broker provides to us.
I'm sure it'll be different for different people for
Yes.
phase 0, but
Yeah.
what are examples, if you guys will share what your phase 0 is, so our listeners can start asking themselves those kinds of questions.
Yeah, some of the basic financials you look at the revenue, and then you look at cost of goods sold, operating expenses, and then you get to a net operating income, or profit that comes out of the business. In the business world, you have a fancy term called EBITDA, which is earning before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And so you can add back some of the expenses that you have. If it's a owner-operator type business, you can also add back the owner's salary, and that gets you to a metric called SDE, seller discretionary earnings. All of those numbers, just think profit. So that is profit that the business can earn for an owner. And so we look at all those numbers to be able to say, what's the profit this business can do? Then we take that and multiply it by a multiple. Those multiples are based on the industry and then the packaging of the business. So how involved is the owner? What is their client diversity, client concentration, revenue sources, other factors like that to tell us how stable the business is? And so we take that profit, multiply it by a multiple, and then we come up with a reasonable valuation of the business. And so you could just do that very quickly, very easy math. And all those numbers, if you look at broker businesses, those are available. If you go to Biz Buy Sell, you can see all those numbers, do that quick math, and you can understand, hey, they have this listed at a high purchase price. with a multiple that seems really high, especially for that industry. And so similar to real estate, when you see something, listed over what you think the market value is, you could submit a lower offer because you think, hey, I think this business is actually valued lower than what it's listed for. And so that's kind of our phase zero. We have our own buy box, which I would encourage everyone to go through on this personal journey when you're going to try to buy a business, whether you want to be in product or services, what industry, what size of business, how many employees do you want to take on. There's kind of a lot to unpack on that journey to define your buy box, and a separate episode on that, like how to define your buy box, because it really is challenging and something that's a personal journey. But to value the business, it's really a simple math equation. Take the profit times the multiple, that's the valuation. So.
Oh, that's awesome. And so for buy boxes, again, maybe we'll have you guys back on or do a deep dive into how to set up a buy box. But let's say you are Jim's Plumbing's son or daughter, and you're like, okay, I've taken over Jim's Plumbing now, and I'm 38, I'm 40. Why don't I go buy all the other good plumbing companies around here and I'll just integrate them? That could be my buy boxes. I buy plumbing companies that do X, Y, Z. Or maybe yours is, I want to diversify. What if the plumbing industry takes a hit for some reason? I want to go buy Bob's electricians. Right now, you're define that for what you might be. And do you have any tips for people of like what you wish you knew versus what you guys know now from the baseline when you are determining that?
Yeah, I would think probably the biggest thing I'll share is we defined our buy box pretty early, and then we started searching within that buy box. And then we started to see some like excursion businesses outside the buy box that we would look at. And that almost really helped us define the buy box even better. It's kind of counterintuitive because you don't want to look at so much that you're not focused, but you also need to look at enough to be able to learn and narrow in that buy box. And the more businesses you underwrite, the more owners you talk to, the more brokers you talk to, the more you're going to learn, and the more you're going to figure out niches of businesses. I mean, an example of one, I looked at 23 businesses yesterday, and just like one of them was a custom pallet manufacturer, right? And this guy, the owner, is completely out of the business. He's making $50K in cash, put 0 hours in. He's owned it for 40 years, but it's just a custom pallet business. And he's giving a ton of cash to his operator, like the manager that's on site there. But who knew that you could be making, I think he's doing $2 million in revenue, and he's taking $50K home, ton of equity. He owns the real estate. This guy built a really cool business doing custom pallet manufacturing for different industries, right? It's just wild what you can do out there business-wise. But I never would have known that industry existed, or that niche of a business if I wasn't searching and willing to look in a buy box, and that business, for example, would be great for someone who wants to invest in businesses and be an owner, but maybe likes their job or what they're doing. And so if you like what you're doing, but still agree with this idea of business ownership, and you need someone to operate the business and you just want to be the owner, then a business like that could be a fit too. So just to give folks, in your audience an idea, this isn't always just a owner operator, right? Where I buy a business and I need to now run it. You could also buy and just be in the owner suite if you can have an operator.
Right. Think like a shareholder.
Yeah, that's the beautiful part about business buying, just like real estate. It's very scalable. So if you want to be more passive and just kind of passively invest, you can.
When done right, it's scalable.
Well, I would say it's a sliding scale. So yeah, obviously do your research, but you have to, you have to know who and how, both, like who to invest with and how to do that. But you could then take it from almost completely passive, almost like kind of a syndication model in real estate would look like, all the way to being an owner operator and getting in the trenches and bootstrapping it and, buying even a turnaround business. And
it's what you want to do. What do you like to do?
Yep.
Cool. All right, so you guys analyze it. So you found a business now. You've analyzed the business. Let's say you decide you like it. What are next steps? What do you guys do?
Yeah, we'll generally go back to the broker if it's listed business, and we'll present any questions we had that were not answered by the information that we provided up to that in that point, whether that's the SIM, executive summary, whatever. A lot of times they'll come back with answers, they'll touch base with the seller, and then eventually, assuming we're all still satisfied and happy with the answers, we'll typically move on to setting up a call with the seller. We like to do, in person if possible, obviously. Often though, it's either a phone call or a Zoom call for the first kind of touch point. Again, the more personal, this is a very personal, emotional game. So the more personal we can get, if that's a Zoom call over a phone call, that's what we'll try to err towards. And then it's almost like a meet and greet. There's a lot of times there's not even as much, technical business in the weeds, negotiation. Like there's not really a lot of that stuff on the first call from what we've seen so far, or at least how we've approached it. It's more of making sure that we are a good fit with the current owners, and vice versa. Because one thing we haven't mentioned up to this point as well is there's very commonly a transition period after the purchase, after the closing of the business. So when the new buyers come in and buy the business, the previous owners will very commonly stay on for a period of a couple weeks to a couple months to, a couple years is not usual, but it's not impossible either. So you're going to have to be working with these people very closely. You're relying on them to a certain point to help you learn the business and be able to succeed with the business moving forward. So you want that good relationship and that trust and just compatibility there as well.
Nice. So meet and greet, then what?
Yeah, so after that initial call, if there's any questions or anything to sort out, once you sort those out, the next step's on you. You need to submit an offer. In the small business space, it typically looks like a letter of intent. And, the reason I'll say a couple different paths is because you could go straight to a contract to buy the business, theoretically. So if you feel comfortable and you know the terms you want to put out, you could put a contract out there and get them under contract. Most of the time, though, there's so much ambiguity in the information in these small businesses that you need to try to stair-step your way through it to understand the risks and really buy down the information gaps that you may have. And so that's why the most common path is to submit a letter of intent. It's non-binding, but it at least puts your terms on paper. So here's the purchase price. Here's the terms that I'm going to do. I'm going to use an SBA loan, put 10% down. You'll get paid 90%, and then this is the transition period we're looking for. Here's all the documents we want in due diligence. And so you kind of put that in a letter of intent, it's also called an offer. And so that you submit your offer. And then once they sign that, then you start working towards a purchase agreement. And then that purchase agreement, asset purchase agreement, is a contract to then buy the business. And so that's kind of the flow. And then once you're under a letter of intent, it's very advantageous for you to do as much of that yourself as possible. But then at some point, you may need to start bringing in your CPA, your lawyer, other professional services and advisors to be able to look at that business and look at the proprietary documentation to validate all of your assumptions. And then you would retrade based on whatever you find. So like say the revenue that they presented up front that you base your letter of intent on, maybe there's some errors there that your CPA finds, or some of the add backs they were including were not quite right. So then you'd start negotiating on how to adjust that. And once you come to an agreement, then you put it under contract. And then after that, you're off to the races to make sure you can secure your financing and get to the closing table.
Awesome. So you found the business. You set a buy box, you started looking, found a business, did your meet and greet, second meeting, do your due diligence, maybe offer a letter of intent. Then you start really gathering information, really doing your due diligence. How many people should you be talking to? How many owners should you be interviewing so you can kind of get that, like, at the beginning of things, it's like you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. After you've talked to 50 or 100, then you're like, okay, you can see right through this guy's lying, or this guy isn't lying, but they have no idea what's going on inside their business, which is very common. what do you think for people that are practicing? How often should they kind of go talk to and practice?
Yeah, our recommended flow is look at 100 businesses in your buy box, offer on 10, close 1. That's what we think the numbers are. I don't have our spreadsheet up right now, but I mean, we've probably looked at somewhere in the 50-ish range right now, in our buy box. So we got a little more to go. We're constantly looking.
I think we're getting close to 80 for this quarter. So that's plus all the ones we've looked at last year and last quarter. So I would say as many as you can. I mean, if this is going to be, especially if this is your main strategy, your full-time thing, I mean, you don't know what you don't know. You want to gather as much information and get as much experience as possible. Talk to as many people as you can. Don't waste anybody's time, including your own. Don't go looking at businesses that clearly aren't a match just to get the experience. But, try to find as many in your buy box as you can and get as much really firsthand experience as you can.
I remember the three of us had looked at a business, or I brought one to you guys to help look at a while back, and it wasn't really in anyone's buy box. I thought it may be inside my buy box because I didn't have a well-defined one at the time. And going through the exercise of actually, hey, well, I'll go do the NDA, let's get the numbers. What I found was, shockingly, I had a lot more experience on how to buy and sell a business, and so I got to teach those owners, and I ended up not buying the business, but I was like, we're not going to be a good fit, but here's what I know about your business, and by the way, did you know you can sell it like this, you can sell it like that, you can do all these things, and I educated them. That was pretty cool, and so I got to walk away. They ended up shutting down their business in the end, but I think they shopped around to 5 or 6 more people armed with better education. And that was a great learning experience for me. And it was a lot less intimidating once I did it, but it sounded intimidating before I did it.
Mm-hmm. You're okay, so that's awesome.
and kind of going through and doing that. I mean, I think I was talking to Dean about this yesterday, if you just help other people constantly, if I happen to make you guys $100,000 because I gave you some advice, then you probably are going to like that or like me. And then if I'm either about to be screwed or maybe have an opportunity, you guys might think of me. And if you're just constantly giving out, usually, it works out well for you.
Yeah, well, it's like you just said, by going through that process and by kind of giving selflessly and helping the owners just, whether there's something in it for you or not, at the very least, you got that experience. Right. So you still got something out of it just by being selfless and saying, hey, I'm going to help you guys out. And then now you're more experienced, you're more confident, you've kind of gone through the process a little bit once or twice.
The other thing, too, was they probably liked me more than any of the other buyers.
Yeah.
And if it came down to the money's close thing, they probably would have picked me to sell to over somebody else. Now, they ended up just saying, actually, our real estate's worth more than anything. We're just going to retire and rent that out as, industrial storage, and I think they're on vacation right now, actually. But yeah, that was a great experience. Okay, so you bought it, you got all the way through, and then you're doing the terms and the financing. I want to do a whole dedicated episode on financing, but that's not going to be this episode because I think it's so cool. But let's just assume it closed, you got a loan from a bank, you got a loan from the SBA, or you negotiated, hey, Jim, why don't here's 10 grand right now, and I'll pay you $2,000 a month for the next 15 years, whatever. Now you've bought the business. What do you guys do?
There's a lot of...
Or what are you looking for? What kind of businesses are you looking for? What weaknesses are you not exploiting, but what weaknesses do you guys see over and over and over again that you have easy answers to? That probably is going to spike the value of the business. That's really the question. What would you guys do?
Yeah, I think I'll start with a couple things and then I'll answer that. One of the big things to always remember is there's a culture that already exists in that business with existing employees and existing clients, suppliers, whatever type of business it is. And so you got to be really careful with culture. The average person doesn't like a lot of change. And so if you come in and start changing a lot very fast, even though you know there's a lot of value to that, that can have adverse effects. And so I think our best strategy that we've kind of in general come across is come in, be willing to learn. So start just asking questions to the existing employees like, what if you guys wanted to do in this business that we haven't been able to do? You know, where can we find the best value? What's bothering you? Where can we get some easy wins, right? I mean, for like HVAC guys we looked at, like some guys want to wear shorts in the shop. Go for it, right? Like that's an easy win you can do for employees. And if it's not client facing, go for it. You know, like there's a couple things like that I would really go after first, but I wouldn't make big sweeping changes immediately until you really understand the business and how to put those in place. But you know, we're engineers, really heavily lean in the software automation and AI side. We'd be looking to we would prototype tools and get those ready to be prime time, and then sync that up with the team ready to implement those. I think that would be probably one of the first things we would do. So we'd be prototyping a lot of things on the back end and getting it ready. And then when we can get the buy-in and the culture from the company and the employees, then we'd put those in play.
Yeah, I'll echo that. Kind of go slow to go fast in terms of check your ego at the door. You know, yeah, we may be fancy computer engineers, electrical engineers that are, you know, super savvy on software and AI, but we also are not the owners who have built this business for the past 40 years. So just maybe there's some things that they're doing that are on purpose, that they've tried to do a different way, or, you know, that there's a reason they're doing these things the way they are. So replicate before you innovate. You know, try it out, see how it goes, figure out where the pain points are, and yeah, talk to the existing employees, especially the ones who have been there for a long time that are tenured, and say, hey, you know, this doesn't seem like the most efficient way to do this. Why are we doing it this way? Like what, right. You know, what have you guys tried before? What has worked? What hasn't worked? You know, why are we still doing it this way? Before, like Rocky said, you just go, you know, wholesale change every single thing in the business on day one, which yeah, you're gonna lose some people. You're probably gonna piss a lot of people off that way. To expand on what Rocky was saying, I think one of the most common areas that I see even just in businesses I do business with on a day-to-day basis to improve upon is the customer journey. So when your customer is first looking for a plumber, right, and your gym's plumbing and you want the customer to come to you, where does that start from the very beginning? And, you know, this gets into marketing and sales, but like, how do they find you? When they do find you, how do they contact you? When they do contact you, how do you get back to them? How do you talk to them? How do you answer the phone? How quickly do you answer the phone? If you miss their call, how do you get back to them if you do at all, which a lot of businesses don't. And then once they start to get further and further down that journey, how do you treat them along the way? You know, what types of, even down to what types of like phrases and words do you use when you're interacting with them? How often do you contact them? How often do you follow up with them, especially during a project, if it's a multi-day or multi-week project, staying on top of that. How do you work with payments? You know, do you take any deposit or upfront payment? How do you send them invoices? How are they able to pay? All this stuff is like, there's so many details that you can go into with this, and it makes such a big impact on, like, just think about a good experience you've had with a company versus a bad experience you've had with a company. And some of those minute details, like one example I love to reference is Chick-fil-A. All of their employees, whenever you say thank you, they say my pleasure. That is what they're trained to say. And it's that slight nuanced, you know, verbiage that they say that has made one of the reasons that's made a huge difference in how popular they are and how successful that business has been. So it's just small stuff like that you can alter, and usually it's nowhere near that nuance. Usually it's, I called this company and nobody ever called me back. I wanted to give them my money and I literally couldn't give them my money. So it's usually very, very low-hanging fruit and bigger stuff like that. But then you can go all the way down to the nuanced level of, you know, putting them on a drip campaign, email newsletter, just to stay top of mind, stuff like that. So.
Oh, that's great. No, I love the advice as well, because if you kind of go through it, and we see this a lot in the lean space, and, you know, it's a lot of the advice that you'll get from a conference. The owner will go to a conference, they'll come back all supercharged, and they'll attempt to implement into their business, and they'll just completely piss everyone off and blow up the company. And so I've been around a lot of successful and helped a lot of successful lean implementations, and I failed at a lot, including one of them was one of my own companies, where the same company on the other side of the world, we were able to, be transformational, and that's one of the things I'm known for. Same company, different dynamics, different culture in different places, and it's really important to learn first and then implement and change second. And so I love that, because you're right. There is a why. The why may or may not be valid. A lot of the times the why is no longer valid.
Yeah.
But let's just get the why first, and then we'll figure out backtrack. Well, actually, that software hasn't existed since 1992. Yeah. Did you know that?
And that's on you as the owner and the visionary and the CEO to make those leadership calls and those command decisions of, hey, yeah, is the reason they just gave me still valid? Or is it, that's the way we've always done things, which we hear a lot in the military, is why do we do it this way? Well, that's the way we've always done it. And again, that may be valid sometimes, but a lot of times it's not. But you if you're not asking those questions, you don't know, and then you get yourself into trouble of, you break a whole supply chain because you just thought, that's not the most efficient. I know better. That's not the most efficient way to do it.
That's cool. So you're saying, come in, learn the why, and then you're really going to look at probably the non-impactful things. I mean, simple stuff like you said, the front end, a lot of marketing stuff. When people call, did you pick up the phone? Let's say I'm a little different because I'm in real estate, but the normal person picks up the phone, they say, I have a plumbing emergency. I don't know a plumber. I go to Google and type in plumber, and I see doesn't have 2 stars or below, call. Doesn't answer, call the next one on the list. Doesn't answer, call the next one on the list. And so you're losing them in the matter of seconds if you didn't have someone to pick up the phone. And there's so many tools now that'll just be like, hey, we're going to get right back to you.
Yep.
As their mid-dial maybe. Or raising prices. I'm sure you guys look at pricing. Have you raised prices in the last 15 years? What are your competitors doing? There's a reason rent goes up by $20 every year for us as a baseline, because we're just trying to keep actually $20 below what market rents are. So we're still a little bit discounted, but we're keeping up with whatever the market rents are. Mm-hmm. And okay, well, I didn't buy any extra properties, but it's almost like I have a full extra property worth of profit now. Year after year after year from $20. Stuff that's usually not going to break the bank. So that's cool. Well, what are some other things, some other takeaways that you would want people who are just learning about this that may want to be interested in?
Yeah, I would just say there's an emotional roller coaster associated with this whole process, right? Dean and I have basically just gone through it on one deal. And so I would say finding people that are doing this, start talking to them about business, because you're really going to need a tribe or a group of people to just get an independent check on, like, does this sound reasonable or not? And then from there, after you have like a small group, then start understanding what experts you need to talk to. A good example for us, we were just looking at an HVAC company, and we don't have an HVAC background, but we went and found an HVAC expert to talk to. And so like those kinds of things and concepts and thought process is really where you need to be. We have the entrepreneurship, ownership, business mindset, but the specific niche expertise for some of these businesses that we're going to buy, we do not have. And so we need to go source that, and we need to talk to experts. And we walk in that door and, check the ego at the door and just say, hey, here's what we thought. Poke all the holes in it you can and help us make the best decision possible. So if you want to go down this journey, feel free to talk to us, talk to other people doing it. That's my best advice.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I mean, I think community is the biggest thing for people to get involved in, not just because of all the great stuff that Rocky just said in terms of the knowledge, the checks and balances, it's like in the military debrief culture of like, all right, let's talk about what just happened, so I, the new guy, can learn from the experienced guys and like short circuit that learning curve and short circuit that learning cycle to get better faster, right? Like that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get better, get smarter faster, and being around people who have done it, who have researched it, who have, are involved in it day to day, that's a big thing. But even more than that, I would say, is the mindset stuff. So I wish I could remember the quote, but it's essentially, if you don't know it's out there, like you're never going to do it, right? So we didn't know this stuff even existed, I mean, a year ago, right? Like, so we never would have thought, I'm going to go buy a business, because we didn't know it was possible. We'd never seen anybody do it. So, it never really crossed our mind, like, let's go do this thing. So, when you see other people and the example that you're shown is that it's very possible and actually kind of a lot easier than you may have thought to go buy a $10 million business, a $100 million business, it breaks those mental barriers down, and just
Right.
getting around the same people, around the same, success and growth mindsets. I can't overstate how big a difference that's made, at least in my journey. So
Right. When someone's gone through and they're like, oh yeah, I remember when I was buying $1 million stuff. Guys, you need to be looking at $5 million stuff. Here's where it matters. Suddenly all the stuff that you were looking at before is like, oh, this is totally doable.
yeah, and we actually were told literally exactly what you just said.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that was kind of our transformation of our buy box. We were like, oh, here's what we can afford. Like, here's what we think we can handle. And then somebody's like, no, you're an idiot. They were nicer about it, but they're like, you're an idiot. Here's why you don't want to look at that. Look at this instead, and I promise you'll be much better off.
Right.
And that was the gist of it, was like, you guys are thinking way too small. So that shaped the evolution of our buy box and what we've started looking at more now.
And so we're going to, there'll be some spin-off episodes, multiple ones. It's funny, I'm talking to you guys often and early on in the podcast, but how to establish the buy box will also determine like what details to look at for the numbers. On a previous podcast episode, I said, know your numbers. Top line revenue, your EBITDA or profit, and your estimated gross. A lot of people don't even know that. And then if you have COGS, cost of goods sold, what are those? And then if you know those, you have enough to at least begin to ask questions. Most business owners I know don't track that. Their CPA does it once a year and they don't pay any attention.
Yeah, and this we haven't sold a business yet, but one of the tips I heard from folks who have done that before is they're like, getting my business ready to sell. I've never known my business more intimately. I've never known more about my business than after I got my business ready to sell. Yep. Because like you said, I hand the receipts in a shoebox to my CPA once a year, and he gives me back my tax returns or whatever. And when you're getting a business ready to sell, you're digging into every single niche, or you should be if you're doing it right.
Another thing too, because I look at this when I'm going to buy a commercial asset. And same thing, we're going to back this up. Let's say I'm Greg's chiropractor. Well, Greg built it the last 30 years. And then Greg says one day, 3 years ago, he says, okay, I'm only going to work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, I'm going golfing. And so the business takes a hit. Well, Greg doesn't care, he doesn't have any debt. Now it's 3 years later and Greg says, okay, I'm ready to sell the business. Well, Greg just shot himself in the foot and doesn't even know it, and we're going to buy your business from you at a fair market value. Well, if Greg just would have said, 3 years, I want to sell my business at some point in the future, I can start today and start taking extremely minor steps towards spiking your EBITDA and your top line revenue, and just very simple things that make it very attractive, right?
Yeah. And a lot of times it's even simpler than that. It's just housekeeping, good housekeeping. Like, making sure your books are in order, making
Don't have them in Excel. Have them in QuickBooks or something.
Making sure that like the things you're taking as business expenses are truly business expenses. That's a big one where And again, good brokers will help filter for this, but a lot of times we'll look at financial recasts or reviews, and they're like, $30,000 a year in meals, and we're like, well, are you taking your family to lobster dinner, every night, or is this like, are you putting on pizza parties for your employees? And one of those is a valid business expense, and one of those isn't. I'll let your astute listeners figure out which is which. It's just little stuff like that can make a big difference in terms of the valuation of the business, what it's worth, and maximizing that value. So
that's huge. Okay, well, there's two of you guys. What is one actionable step someone can take right now to further themselves along? Dean, you go first. Because I'm slightly interested in this or making my business better. What's one action step?
Go read, buy, then build.
Okay.
That's a great place to start.
Buy, then build. And if you're watching this with video, then it's been behind Rocky the whole time here. And it'll also be in the links of the show notes as well.
Yeah, for me, I would just tell you, start talking to more business owners and just ask the simple question, to some older business owners, like, what's your plan with the business? Or what's next, right? You can just ask those simple questions and just let them start talking. And you'll know really quickly if they know they can sell their business or not. And that's just a conversation. Very, very low threat to start understanding where business owners' mindsets are.
Yeah, that's huge. Cool. All right, guys. Well, the show notes are going to have your contact information. Any last words before we hop off?
Small Business Rescue. This is so cool. Thank you.
As we wrap up another episode of Small Biz Rescue, remember, your business dream does not have to be a solo journey. We are here to navigate the challenges and celebrate the victories and to provide you the tools you need to break free from entrepreneurial enslavement. Guys, if you're listening right now, you might have gotten value from this. And if you have, it'd be a huge thanks to go wherever you're listening to this from, rate and review this, give us a 5-star rating. We listen and read every single comment and are constantly updating the show. If you want to be on the show, shoot us an email at sbr@hughcarnahan.com. Guys, remember to stay tuned, to take action, keep pushing forward, because with the right steps and a bit of courage, anyone can transform their business and their life. Until next time, keep dreaming, fighting, and let's rescue your business together. Thanks for listening, and remember, next step to your business breakthrough is just an episode away. Woo!